This is Creative Banter. It seems my traditional bad luck has made its way through the microphone, latching on to Ben this week, as he struggles with multiple setbacks of varying degrees. First, his primary hard drive fails, then his Forerunner needs repair, but that's not all. Still, there lies here a lesson on patience, and that, at the end of the day, these are only things. Things which can be fixed or replaced. We end this episode with a discussion on threads, which I have found myself playing around with quite a bit. We'll see how long that lasts. Let's dive right into this, shall we?
So it is fall, as we have discussed in several of the past episodes now. I've come to the conclusion that this is the time of year that things fall apart.
Oh boy.
It's been an interesting week. And I mean, there's, as we were just chatting about before we started recording, there's some times when I'll be just like sitting there, I'm like, oh man, I got to come up with some sort of topics to mention this week. But this is one of those weeks that has handed me several topics, and I will be curious to hear. I think this will lead to some interesting conversations, and I think it would be perhaps a good reminder for some people who are listening. And also, I'd be curious to hear some of your strategies in that sense.
Okay.
But essentially, my wife and I, we went up to the Eastern Sierra, good camping trip. We're there for 2 nights. Did some camping there. It was great. Came home. And when I came home, I was downloading some of the snapshots I'd taken with my little pocket camera, and found that my hard drive died. So I have an external hard drive I keep every photo I've ever taken on. And it was just completely non-responsive. For some people that are listening right now, you'd be just thinking this is a nightmare situation. Thankfully, I have a system in place to make sure that everything is thoroughly backed up. So, nothing is lost. And I have a system where I have a local backup as well as an online backup, because I've had, this sort of thing happen before. So before I kind of talk a little bit about how I do things and how I was able to avoid any issues, I'm curious, what do you do in terms of backing up your data and make sure that you have everything safe in the event of a hard drive failure?
Nothing.
That
is not good.
So I
yeah,
yes,
it's funny because so I have some backups of mainly my digital work and stuff. I have 2 8 or 4 terabyte drives that aren't like the ones that you carry. They have to be plugged in, and
yeah, those
hold some real old work, 2014 to 2017 maybe. And then I have 2 other hard drives that are Western Digital drives. I think most of my stuff is Western Digital, which is unfortunate given the circumstances that they're under now, but still.
Yeah.
But yeah, my whole system needs to be revamped. I just was never truly concerned about it a ton because I have the film. So
yeah, which is true. That's the sort of the ultimate backup.
Yeah. Like right as I'm transitioning over more towards digital, I need to get into a better workflow with that and have more backups. But when it comes to film, I wasn't tremendously concerned about it. Not nearly as much as I probably should have been.
Yeah. I mean, when I was, way back when I was first getting into photography, I had a hard drive fail and I was able to recover some of the data, but some of it was lost. And so I learned pretty early on that you really need to have not only a backup, but an automated process where it automatically backs itself up. And the ultimate strategy is to have 3 copies of the information, 2 local, and then really 1 off-site. And so I devised a way of doing that. Back when I guess 2 computers ago, I had a Mac, one of the desktop kind of cheese grater looking computers, and it had 4 hard drive bays on the inside. And I had a way of just kind of like cloning them, but I was just working off the internal hard drives. But then I ended up getting an iMac, and I wanted to have all my data really on external drives, which also makes it handy when switching to a new computer. So when I have the one I have now, I just plugged in the hard drives and everything was good. but I'm working within, I need to be able to edit video and photos off the external drives. And initially I was thinking about getting actually I purchased a network attached storage from Synology. But what I found right away is that Final Cut Pro, which is the video editing software I use, its library was not compatible with a network attached storage device. So you could store data on it, but you could not edit the video that was on it. And so I had to send it back. And things may have changed now, but that was a limiting factor in the way that I do things. So I bought, basically, I started with 2, at the time they may have been a little bit smaller. Now I'm using 12 terabyte external drives that connect via Thunderbolt to my Mac. And it's fast enough where I can edit video, I can edit photos off the external drives. But basically I have all my photos on one drive. And then I have a duplicate drive that is cloned every night from the primary external drive. And so the thought is that if something happens to that primary external drive, I have a local copy. I can just buy a new drive, copy the contents over, and everything's good. But then there's the worst case scenario, which is what if the house burns down, earthquake, sea monster, anything like that takes down physically my computer.
Your cat.
And that's when I was, I was looking around and I found Backblaze is a really good online cloud backup. And at the time, back in 2018, it was one of the only ones that has unlimited backup, but also it can back up a Thunderbolt connected external drive. A lot of them wouldn't back up from an external drive that's connected via Thunderbolt. The way everything works out, I basically have my external drive. Every night that is duplicated using software called Super Duper, which is, I think it might just be for Mac. So it clones it over, so I have my local copy. And then that primary external drive is constantly backed up to the cloud via Backblaze.
Okay.
And so it has all my bases covered. So when I got back from the trip and I saw that my primary drive for photos, which has, I think it was a little over 7 terabytes on there or something like that, it just wasn't even working. I simply unplugged the drive, ordered another one, which should show up today, and you'll know when it arrives when you hear Oliver barking in the background. But I'll plug that in. I'll copy over the contents from my for a sort of redundant on-site drive, and then I'm up and running again. That drive is like a $600 drive or something. So it still costs me, but it's not costing me in terms of actually losing data.
Right. So with that setup, you have everything connected to your computer at all times. Those 2 external drives, right?
Yes. They're always hooked up. And actually, I added a second one of those setups just for video. Okay. So I have a total of 4 external drives. And then at some point, the video drives fill up. And so I just purchased another one of those drives, and I just move older video to that other drive, which is not connected all the time. Okay. And there's only one copy of that stuff because I'm not as concerned about that for like older video. I never really do much with the really old stuff anyways. Yeah. But for photos and for current stuff, I have 2 local copies, and then I have the offsite. And the key is to make it where it happens automatically in the background. You don't have to connect something and remember to try to back it up. Because when things go wrong, it's nice to have that completely up-to-date backup. Yeah. So this is just a reminder for those listening that, putting in a little bit of effort to figure out a system that works for you, that's automated, and it can be very reasonably priced. Backblaze, it's less than $10 a month. I think when I started, it was $6 a month. It may have gone up a little bit, but it just gives you that sense of peace of mind. And I mean, obviously for shooting film, ultimately the film itself is the, I guess the 4th copy. But it saves all the work of having to go through and rescan and everything else along those lines. Right. Especially when you're drum scanning, because that would get quite pricey if you lose all that stuff and have to redo it again. Yeah, exactly. That gets to be very, very expensive as well. Yeah. I've got to figure out some kind of system, but especially it's going to take me a minute to figure it out because of working from a laptop.
So
Yeah.
I can't have everything connected all the time, all at once, because I will sometimes work downstairs, sometimes move around or travel with it. So that's why I like having the external drives that I just quick unplug, plug in when I need to edit photos, and then unplug from there to do printing or anything else. Especially since the MacBook Air that I have only has 2 USB-C ports. So it's kind of like I can't have a bunch of, even if it was on a desk all the time, I can't really have a lot unless I get a dongle or whatever you want to call it. So
yeah. There'll be some sort of creative solution there, but I mean, I can think of 4 times through the years that I've had drives fail that had data on them. And of those 4 times, 3 times it was completely backed up in one way or another. And the first time was the time that it wasn't. And so it was something I definitely learned from.
Yeah, that's a good reminder for people to make sure that your backups are in place, or just to double check that they're actually working too.
And sort of continuing the theme of things falling apart. So other things that have broken lately. So I picked my Forerunner up from the shop the other day because I had them fix something on it. Because I had noticed for the past probably year or so, there was this little issue that didn't seem like the car was going to fall apart, but there was something where I'm like, something's wearing. I got to figure out what it is. It was really weird because, if I hop in my Forerunner, if it's been sitting overnight or so, I start it up, I start driving straight, everything's normal. But the moment I turn the steering wheel just a little bit, there's like this little, it's hard. It's not a click. It's not a pop. It's just like a little bit of you feel it overcome something, and you feel like a little bit of a friction that has to overcome. And then everything is normal and everything feels fine. And also I noticed that if I'm ever on a pretty bumpy road, like on my backpacking trips, something felt a little bit loose and weird with the front end. So I took it to the shop and I said, I think my CV axles, which is the axles that connect to the front wheels to give them power when I'm in 4-wheel drive, but they're always, linked to the wheels and stuff. But I think that they're getting worn out. And the mechanic said, they seem fine. We took it for a test drive. Everything's fine. And I am not extremely mechanically inclined, but looking at the symptoms of everything happened, I was fairly confident that they are worn. Maybe not to the point where, a mechanic is going to be like, it's going to be very obvious that they're worn.
They'll probably still pass inspection, but they could.
Yeah. And it's something that it's not going to fail eminently, but if you look at how they're designed, there's like these little balls that kind of roll and everything, and it kind of wears away at the channel that they're in. And it was just enough where it was bugging me. Like if I noticed these little things, and anyone who, has a car, drives a car, if you notice that something's a little off, I end up getting paranoid, like something's going to just catastrophically fall apart when I'm in the middle of nowhere and stuff like that. But I said, how about we just, replace them? And so had them put in some new ones, and sure enough, it completely fixed the problem. But so far, I have the hard drive I had to buy, and then I had to replace the CV axles in the Forerunner. And so things are starting to add up. I got a bill in the mail for property tax, which is coming up. One of the joys of being a homeowner.
Yeah.
It always comes into fall. And I would be, at this point in time, probably going for a bike ride right now. But my bike broke. I can't win.
Dude, what is going on? The past few weeks, it's been nothing but problems with me, with like job searching. Yeah. I'm complaining all the time on here. And now we just switched today, and it's like,
now I'm getting all the bad luck.
Ben's got all the bad luck. It just seems to rub off through the microphone.
Yeah. So like on the front derailleur, there's 2 bolts that kind of serve as pivot points for when it kind of moves to shift the chain. And one of them, it was shifting weird when I was out for a ride, and I got back and I put it on the stand. I was kind of looking at it. I'm trying to troubleshoot why it's all of a sudden acting weird. And so I tried to loosen one of the bolts, and I found it was just spinning endlessly.
Nice.
And I'm like, this bolt isn't even like, it's broken. So I was able to kind of pull it out, and sure enough, it was busted. Of course, it's a very very proprietary specific bolts
Right, of course.
that I can't just buy on Amazon or whatever. So I took it to a local bike shop, and they're having to see if they can get that part. So I don't think it will be repaired in time for me to take the bike to Zion.
Oh,
But, that was just going to be a side thing anyways. And
yeah, but you had just figured out how to do that too, didn't you?
yeah, I just figured out how I was going to transport it. I got the case to put it in, and at some point I will be able to bring it there. It probably won't be this year. Maybe they'll come through in a miracle and they'll figure out a way of getting it fixed. But in the scheme of things, maybe it's better that I don't bring it. Maybe it'll just allow me to concentrate a little bit more on what I'm doing. And when my wife and I were up on our camping trip, it was really hot here. It was really hot as we were driving kind of through the eastern Los Angeles areas. We were heading north. We went up to Bishop Creek and camping up in the mountains. And so where we were camping, it was really nice weather. But on the way there, it was very, very hot. And we were in our kind of the last little stretch of highway. And all of a sudden, I start hearing this little blup, 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 blup sound. And then eventually I see what it is. It's the this rubber piece of weather stripping that runs up the side of the windshield, kind of between it and the metal. And it was warm enough where I guess it had kind of the glue that holds it in place had softened. And then there's like this metal thing, which is just beating continuously on the side window as it's kind of, getting flapped around in the wind. And so I always have gaffer's tape with me. So I when we eventually were able to stop, about 45 minutes later of it just constantly just bashing the side of the car, I was able to stop and tape it and get that going. But I was just reminded with everything happening that, these are just things and things can be fixed. And I think sometimes people get very bent out of shape when stuff happens. But in the scheme of things, in the scheme of everything else happening in the world, these are small things that can be fixed. And there was another time too, when we were on the camping trip, where there's this relatively narrow road that leads up to a lake called North Lake. And we had gone up there, we were coming back, and it hugs this hillside. So you have a big steep drop off on one side and then kind of an embankment on the other side. And we're driving back and we're going pretty slowly just because, it's a 1-lane road with a lot of blind corners and stuff. And there's some cars coming the other way. And there's this one car that was going way too fast around a blind curve. I saw it coming. And so I kind of pulled off to the side a bit. And I didn't see it at the time, but I guess there was this bush there, and it was like nails on a chalkboard, just like this branch just scratching down the entire length of my car.
Nice.
Just because this other driver was going way too fast and taking up too much of the road, because I guess they just weren't paying attention. And my wife just kind of looks out the window and she's like, well, maybe it's just in the dust. She just sees these like lines just down the entire length of my car. And you'd think that after you just scrape the entire length of your car, you'd just be like, you think you'd get a little upset about that. But I'm like, it is what it is. It's a thing.
Yeah.
Things can be fixed. So, but also, it's 10 years old. And after I got back, I was able to, I washed off to check it out. I should be able to buff it all out. It's not that big of a deal. But just as a reminder, have a good way of backing up your data, make it effortlessly, make it automatic. But when things happen, things can be fixed. And I think that's kind of a big lesson of the story.
All good reminders. But it's also one of those things, like, especially dealing with the puppies now, like the patience aspect of like things just getting messed up or whatever happening. Like, it can be very trying. I mean, I had, so Emmy's been great in terms of like potty training and everything in the house, but every so often she'll just not go to the bell like she likes to, that we have on the door to signal I want to go out.
Yeah.
She'll just decide to pee on the floor. And then yesterday, I think I was getting ready to go with her to bring her to my girlfriend's last field hockey game that she was coaching for the middle school that she works at. and she decided that she was going to pee on the floor. I'm like, ugh, all right, like whatever, clean it up quick. As soon as I throw away the paper towel that I had used to clean it up,
Yeah.
she decides not a foot away from it to pee again on the floor. I'm like, your bladder's bladder's the size of my thumb. Like, how is there this much to expel?
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things of like, it was so irritating at that moment because I had just thrown that out. I just cleaned up the one, and now I have to go and redo it all. And it's that reminder of like you were saying, it's just stuff like that happens. It's not a big deal. Like, take a deep breath. And for me, like, realize the fact that she's 10 weeks old. Like, she's a baby.
Yeah.
So trying to like yell at her or reprimand her for doing that is just, you're not going to go anywhere with it. But yeah, it's a good reminder, but definitely something that takes a lot of time and takes a lot of patience to learn.
Yeah.
So,
and that's also something, and it's interesting that you mentioned that, because the other thing I've been thinking about over the past week or so, whether it was the driver that wasn't paying attention, perhaps was a little impatient and kind of mostly ran me off the road, or just, you know, the addiction to social media. It seems like so many things in this world come from a sense of impatience.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the root cause of so many issues. And I feel like that is something that is only going to get worse with time. And it's just being trained into us just on a daily basis, you know, that with the instant gratification and everything else. And I think that's something that's missing in society.
Yeah. I mean, I've been pretty active right now the past 2 days or so on Threads. I'm actually finding myself to be really enjoying it more than I thought that I would have been with anything else because of it being social media.
I've seen some of your posts on there. Someone
posted about how photographers are doing like these reels where they're saying they're showing a bunch of their work and like, oh, I'm just going to keep showing my work until finally I get the attention or get X number of followers and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is a shame. And like the thread was great and I responded to it and had a little bit of a conversation there. But it's just like you were saying, one of those things of just impatience and just people prioritizing numbers of likes or followers or reposts or views or any of that over genuine discussion and genuine like interactivity between people. And as just like what I commented, I'm like, I'd much rather have 10 people that I interact with regularly who truly are interested in the work that I create, in the art that I make, and what I have to say, who are interested in me, versus having 1,000 people or even 1,000,000 people that only like my stuff because they saw one video that went viral or popped off, and that's it. Like it's very baseline interaction, like doesn't just likes instead of actual interactivity discussion.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. The other thing I was thinking about is I wonder how many people, if there's something that they're into, whether it's photography or whatever, and then they perhaps share it on social media. And if it doesn't give them the sort of response, if they don't have the sort of response that they're looking for from the work, whether it's the positive encouragement or whatever, I wonder how many people just simply give up and move on to something else, as opposed to sticking with it for the sake of, you know, their own enjoyment, where, you know, back in the days before social media, where a person would find something they're interested in and just keep working and working at it without the need for that sense of validation. Versus now, I wonder if people just might not even go down that road just because they don't get that immediate sense of whatever it is that they're looking for. They say, oh, I must be horrible at this, I'm just going to do something else, as opposed to sticking with it.
I think that ties right into the old saying that or the old belief that's unfortunately still pretty pervasive, that creativity is innate, that you're born creative or you're not, which is a complete lie. I mean,
yeah.
And I think before you had that belief system that prevented people from pursuing photography or some form of art or creative act. And now you have that still is there, but now more people are looking at, well, if I don't get X amount of followers or X amount of likes per post with my photography, with my creative act, well, then it's no good.
Yeah, it seems like that just kind of further digs into the whole hive mind thing.
Yeah.
Versus, people not as much thinking for themselves. It's more about just looking for that external gratification.
And it's a shame too, because there are a lot of people who don't get the recognition that they should have or that they think that they should get or deserve. And they're creating wonderful work. And then they give up on it because they didn't get that recognition that they wanted. They didn't get those followers that they thought that they should have gotten, or they can't make it into a successful business. And so they say, well, then why even bother at all?
Yeah.
So,
and it also seems like it'll just lead to a far more uniform style.
Yeah.
People are just doing things to please the masses as opposed to please themselves, which is ultimately just a little, you diminish that diversity of creation, of creativeness. Which I've certainly seen that with photography, where everything kind of tends toward a certain style because that's what really, gathers the most attention.
Yeah, that's the same with like color versus black and white. I refuse to give up black and white and go to color just because it's more likely to give me better attention or more likely to get a little bit more views, whatever. But you just have to stick with what you believe in most. And if it doesn't work out, like financially or from a success standpoint, then whatever, just keep doing it because you love doing it.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've been enjoying Threads more than Instagram.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm sure that's going to change. Just like I said in the story that I posted, I'm sure Meta will find a way to screw something up, like because right now there are no ads.
Yeah.
So that's probably the most refreshing thing in the world to see. But I'm sure they're going to bombard you with ads eventually and have something that gets screwy.
Yeah.
But no, for now, I'm been really enjoying it more than I thought that I would have.
And I think the last I looked, you hadn't posted any actual work on Instagram yet. I've just seen the stories, right?
Right. Yeah. Instagram, I haven't done anything but the stories with. Even with Threads, I just did like an introductory kind of post like, hey, this is who I am, just for some kind of interaction based. That way, if people do go onto it, it's not just no threads yet kind of deal. So
yeah,
I plan on posting on both Instagram and Threads something. I don't know what I plan on doing with Instagram yet. I might just do kind of like an introductory, like this is who I am kind of post and just see where that goes and see if that does anything at all. And then on Threads, I plan on doing right now the deer algorithm posts are popping off, and that seems to be getting or helping to gain a lot of traction to at least figure out who are like-minded individuals to connect with, which is so weird to me because you're essentially telling an app what you want to see, and it's refreshing where you don't have to like bombard your posts with a bunch of hashtags or with a bunch of like flashy content or something.
Yeah.
You can just kind of put out this post, and there's a photographer and writer who I follow, Jeremy Bassetti. He had done the deer algorithm post thing and ended up with like 50 replies and a ton of new followers and that kind of thing because of people genuinely wanting to interact with him and see what he's doing. So we'll see how that goes on Threads, and then post some of my work and just kind of use it as a more of a sounding board of what I'm thinking about for essays or for photography in general and that kind of deal. Just because that's what I wanted with Twitter as well. And it just didn't end up happening that way because I joined right during the NFT boom.
Yeah.
And from there, it's been downhill, and it just keeps going downhill somehow instead of just dying. So I didn't get that true discussion, that true interactivity on Twitter like what I want and like what I'm getting with Threads for now. So
I do wonder what happened to all the NFT photographers, the ones who branded themselves as like an NFT artist or whatever. I don't hear that as much anymore. I don't know. It's kind of funny how that drops off, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. They're still out there. They're definitely still out there, but they've definitely
probably a far
down.
Smaller group. Yeah. So do you have a sense of hesitation when it comes to whatever you'll end up posting on Instagram and on Threads as far as actual work? Is there like a feeling in terms of like you're not really you're putting it off a little bit, or how's that working out?
So my interactions with Threads and why I decided to start using it a little bit more and testing it out, not only has it been gaining momentum a bit more now that everybody's fleeing Twitter, but I had talked before about starting up that Substack and using that for just like more of weekly reflections and weekly posts and smaller pieces of writing. But I obviously haven't done any of that yet. And I kept going back and forth, like, do I want to put all of this work onto a separate platform, or do I want to keep it on my own website and kind of utilize that SEO and draw in people from there in a sense? Mm-hmm. And regardless which way I wanted to go, I wanted to have some kind of community, some kind of some way of discussing things with people, and that community. So I kind of I just decided to go with Threads because it seemed like it was doing well so far. And so now it's at a point where I can't say that I'm really hesitant about posting anything. It's just that I just haven't sat down to figure out what I want to do. And I don't know if that's necessarily like with Instagram, it's not a hesitance because I don't know what I want to do. It's more hesitance because I have to actually sit down and write out the stories for each of my photographs that I want to post. And it's more of like the workload aspect of it and the time part.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And part of that still follows along with Threads, I think, where I'm going to still do the same thing with that, where I post a photograph and like a little bit of a story about it. So it's not really a hesitancy, like trying to procrastinate. It's more of just trying to find the time to commit to it and making a post versus anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. I can see how, like, with the style of you wanting to have the writing with it and everything, it does take a bit more work. Usually if I'm posting something, I just put it there. I just type out a few things and blah, 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 it's not as much involved in it. And I don't, it's pretty simple in that sense. But I can definitely see from your standpoint on that one.
Yeah. But there's including stories along with photographs thing is also something else that I've been thinking a little bit about, because right now how my website stands, I can't do what like Andrew Baruffi does, where he has a photograph and then the story aside of it, where you can have that as a light box, unless you actually have like a screenshot of the written text and put that, which doesn't.
It's not going to display as well. It
doesn't display as well. It's not going to do anything for SEO if you're concerned about that. So I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I think even if I post them on Instagram and on Threads or whatever, I might end up turning it into more of like an ebook thing, like a free ebook, and running with that just to see if people are interested in the stories behind these photographs and why they're meaningful to me, and just see how that goes and have that as a way to get those stories versus trying to figure out a way to put them on the website right now.
Yeah, and you have more control over the type and the display and everything else along those lines too.
Exactly. And then if I really want to, I can always have it be, because of so much of my written work being handwritten at first, have it be the original handwritten story that would be just cool. Gets a photo on their side of it. So just...
Yeah, I think that would add a whole nother aspect of it to make it seem more personal as well.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to figure out various different things all at once and hopefully make something work. Because I have a couple of different ebook ideas as well that are in the back of my head that I'm slowly chugging along through. But yeah.
Is your camera back from repair yet?
It is. Yeah, it arrived earlier this week. I don't remember exactly one day, but I think it was before the weekend. So I think it was like Friday, maybe last Friday. All good. Used it a couple times just around the house, backyard kind of deal, and haven't had any issue right now. Hopefully it stays that way. So
hopefully all of the bad luck has transferred to me, and then that is going to then, I don't know, just flow somewhere else far away from me, wherever that is. I don't know, but I definitely caught whatever it was that you had. It just affected more things.
Hey, maybe this means I'll finally get a job.
That's true. That's true. How's that going, by the way?
I haven't done a ton with it. I had one of our listeners reached out, I want to say maybe a week or so ago, and on the Discord, and he was like, "Hey, he does like job recruiting and stuff, but he's over in the UK." And he was like, "If you need help with your resume, with your cover letters, that kind of deal, we can work together to figure all that kind of stuff out and make it a little bit nicer and see if that helps." I just haven't had the time, or I haven't really put aside the time, I should say, to sit down and actually put all that stuff together and send it over to him to have that conversation. So I'll have to do that. But I've been looking here and there. It's just nothing's really been popping up. So
just the whole thing, it just seems like it's this game that you have to play, which just where no one really knows what the rules are, and it feels so very like performative when it comes to like the job interviews and everything else. And it's if you can say the things that they want to hear that may not necessarily reflect, the reality of it. It just seems weird with having to jump through so many hoops and everything else. And
that's like, I don't know if I said something back when I interviewed for LL Bean, but it was part of a group interview, and it was such a joke because you're repeating each other the entire time. Yeah. It was just we sat in a circle all at once with the manager and the assistant manager or whatever she was. And it was one of those deals of, all right, so here's the question. Who wants to go first? And as soon as the first person answered, it was like, yeah, that's pretty much what I would have said. Yeah. Like, all right. Yeah. So I'm going to go next, and I'm going to go off of what X said, and then after me, Y just compounds it, and it just keeps going. And it's like one or two original answers maybe, but otherwise it's just a joke. Yeah. And it's a shame.
And it's probably doesn't even matter what you're saying. It's probably just matters like how you say it or your inflection or, something along those lines is probably what they're paying more attention to.
Yeah. I mean, like with a retail,
as opposed to what they're actually asking you,
Yeah. Like with a retail position like that. I mean, as long as you're not saying that you're going to tell a customer to F off, like if they irritate you or something, then I don't think they're really going to have an issue with you, as long as you're like, and it's not like they even did any kind of background checks or any of that stuff either. So realistically, like, I don't know. I'm just floating along, watching the puppies all day and trying to maintain my sanity.
Yes. Oh man. Yeah, I earlier today before we were recording, I was getting my Forerunner packed. Now that everything's fixed, everything's good. I've been getting everything packed, getting all the batteries charged, getting everything set. I enjoy the process of packing my Forerunner for the trips, because everything goes in like a specific place. I always try to find a better way of packing things every single time I go. And so I'm going to be, so we're recording this on a Thursday. And so in this coming Tuesday is actually when I'm heading to Zion, which it's surreal. I mean, this year has just gone by so fast. It feels like I was just on my spring trip, and then, all of a sudden the summer is just, gone like that. And now it's time to head to Zion. And, but there's something that's very, satisfying about getting everything packed, going through everything, making sure everything's good, testing things, making sure like the shutters are clicking right on the lenses, and putting everything in its place and getting everything cleaned up, and making sure I have everything. And I was also going through some of the photos I shot on my iPhone when I was there this past fall. Because that trip, for those that watch the videos or listen to the podcast or whatever, you'll remember that, that trip ended a little bit early. I mean, I was there for 10 days, but I ended up a little bit early because I fell and kind of busted my wrist. Nothing broken, but just was quite painful. And so I still had some subjects that I was intending to photograph, but, I just ended up heading home because my wrist was hurting. But I was going through the photos on my iPhone, and I was just rediscovering all these subjects I had forgotten about. And so I know in a past episode of the podcast, I was saying how I don't really have any specific subjects in mind for this trip. But, after seeing all those scouting photos, I started remembering things. And so some of those are subjects that don't rely on any fall color or anything like that. So I am pretty excited about getting out there again, about trying to see if I can photograph some of those subjects in the early days of the trip. But it's just, Zion is it's always such a fun trip just because the weather is usually quite nice. There's a good balance in terms of, being with my vehicle at all times, as opposed to the backpacking trips where things are a little bit more, you got to rough things a little bit more, but, good, plentiful cell signals, relaxing nights back at camp, and just such beautiful scenery out there in Zion. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. And I'm just glad that I've been able to get the things that broke mostly fixed, except for the bike maybe, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what comes of it for this fall trip. But I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what occurs in the next week or so.
Yeah. Looking forward to hearing all of your fun misadventures when you come back.
Yes.
Seeing what else ends up falling apart for you. Hopefully nothing. Yeah. Hopefully not yourself, but
hopefully, yeah, exactly. Hopefully no wrists or ankles or anything else along those lines. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's nice. Do you have any plans to get out for fall at all?
Not really. I kind of feel weird going out and leaving Emmy at home.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, I may make a run over to like some of the local parks that are around me within like a half-hour distance, spend the morning here or there just to get some kind of interaction with nature again. And then I'll probably end up trying to figure out a weekend, maybe in November, to go up to the mountain house again, and because at least that way Emmy can come with. So
yeah, be a new place to explore and to romp around and to check out.
Exactly. And at that point, I'll be working with her, at least getting her more used to the leash and trying to see how she does with that, even though she's still really young for that. So
yeah,
we'll see. It's a whole new way of living now that I have a puppy to take care of.
Yes, it certainly has a way of changing things. That is for certain.
Yeah, but it also makes me more like appreciative of the little scenes that I have around the house too. And that's something that's like I've always been a fan of, but at the same time, it's kind of almost feels like cheating in a sense to like go around during golden hour and photograph leaves against bark or something, like little scenes like that with the macro lens especially. But anything to keep the creative juices flowing a bit.
Oh, for sure. It'll shift your mind into that creative space in terms of taking photos. And it's kind of cool how you can just kind of snap into that mode and snap out of that mode, as need be. So that's good. And that's something we're definitely having. The digital kit will be, I think, beneficial in that sense, because there's no way you'd be busting out the 4x5 or whatever in those scenarios. Otherwise, it wouldn't be practical. I hope you enjoyed our creative banter. You can learn more about Cody's work by visiting his website, codyschultz.com. And you can find my work at benhorn.com. For further discussion, join us at patreon.com/creativebanter. It's a place where we can interact with you, the listener. And although we greatly appreciate those who contribute by joining a tier, discussions are open to everyone, whether you're a paying member or not. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you around next time.